Is there a difference between process mapping and mind mapping? And I'm answering this question because I see this a lot online. People don't really know about process documentation, process engineering, and so they assume when I start talking about symbols and flowcharting and that I'm talking about mind mapping. And no, these are two completely different processes. And I'm going to explain the difference so that you can go forward and understand what that is and maybe make use of process documentation and engineering in your business. So, 20 scary number of years ago, 24 years ago now, I went to school for operations management. That included process engineering and operations improvement and all kinds of other wonderful things. And I learned this flowchart process. And I want to begin by saying that I'm a list guy, okay? I'm a very orderly person. I like things in an organized fashion. And a mind map, to me, looks like somebody took a bowl full of spaghetti and dumped it on the floor, and you get all these noodles lying around and all across each other, and it looks very disorganized to me. So when somebody says, oh, that's mind mapping, or so, I love the mind mapping idea, I get that a lot. I'm like baffled by it because to me these two are completely different things. Process engineering is a lot more like the list type of viewpoint than the stuff that I see when it comes to mind mapping. So in mind mapping, you're interested in nodes and ideas spreading out of that. And this is still a very useful tool. Like, I'm not saying don't use it. However, it is not the same thing as process engineering, okay? They are two different things, process mapping and mind mapping. So you're interested in mind mapping. I'm starting with this because that's the one that's more familiar to you, very, very likely. And so you get an idea and then you expand out from that, right, with these sort of squid tentacles of ideas. It starts to make my eyes cross. Now, process mapping on the other side, and you'll see in a moment why this is so much more orderly and why I like it better, is it's very direct. It's from this to this to this, and then there's a decision, and we split off, and like that's how it works. It's not one of these, okay, I got 50 ideas, and here are sub-ideas all spreading out from that. It is a process of steps. So you begin with maybe an inspection, right? Like something is brought to the station. Is this thing any good? For example, quality control. Does it match up with the standards that we have? That's the first thing. And so there's a symbol for that, inspection. Then if it passes or fails inspection, the tree will split. And it'll go yes or no, right? And if it's a yes, then it goes on to the next modification, which could be an operation, right? Like now we're going to attach the arm to it, and that's that process step. If it's a no, maybe it gets transported back, and now it's a delivery thing, right? Back to the previous station. Now, if I were engineering this thing, this would be an alarm bell ringing for me. I would be like, we need to take this inspection and move it back to the previous station, right? It shouldn't leave there until we know it's good. It manages to hit the quality assurance specs, right? So this idea that there are operations and inspections and delays and other steps that are known and that we can map them is key, and it's a very linear process. It's not like this sort of confused, to me, idea generator of mind mapping. And mind mapping, I find, is a lot more subjective, too. And it's like, how do we put this together conceptually, idea? Whereas process mapping, kind of, again, theoretically, people doing the mapping ought to do it the same, right? Like the step is the step. There is what's fighting back against that mentality with me is the idea that, well, yeah, but then there's like levels of abstraction, like how deep or how thin do we want to slice the steps, basically. And so that is what would make a difference in a process map. But essentially, it should all be there. Whereas on the mind map, you could have two different people come up with two completely different mind maps, right? It's subjective. What do I think about this? What's important to me about this? Whereas in the process map, the steps are the damn steps. Like, we do this, and then we do this, and then we do this. Now, my company, Cold Star Technologies, can come in. We'll send an agent that will talk to your employees and write down, map out this process for you. And because we're more familiar with the whole step-by-step process of how you do that, we're going to get it done better, faster, and you're going to get a result. And that's called process documentation, right? Process mapping. Now you got this thing, what do you do with it, right? Well, the first thing, and this is what we are really good at, is you have to confirm, okay, I talked to the employees and they said we do this, A, B, C, D, E, right? But oftentimes what we'll find, and we have methods of finding this out that are pretty unobtrusive, it doesn't go A, B, C, D, E. The way this employee is doing it is A, B, D, E. They skip C because maybe that document needs to go into an office and they don't like that person, so they bypass it and it goes back later on in reality in the process, right? And this could cause delays, hiccups, quality control, outcome issues, right? And this stuff is going on all the time. So we need to confirm, are you doing what you said you're doing? And this is also, if you've heard of ISO quality standards, this is how you confirm we do what we say we do. It's super important, especially in a manufacturing operation where something needs to be coming out of the process at a certain standard level, like pharmaceuticals or food or just machine parts. But this also could go for graphic design. If you don't follow the steps in the order that you say that they're supposed to be done in, how the heck are you going to have consistency of results, right? So if you're always having problems and your project scheduling is all screwed up, start mapping out your process, because that's a big indicator that there's something wrong there. So once we straighten this thing out and either change the process map to match what's actually happening, because that's the way they're going to do it now, and you agree with that, or we find out somebody's bypassing things or scamming you, that's very common as well, and straighten that out. And so now everybody's got the process map and they can follow it. And we see this in the coding industry and manufacturing and in all kinds of places, right? Where this is very valuable in getting a consistent standard of result. Then you are free to look at each of those steps and go, wait a minute. And if you've watched or listened to any of my podcasts before, you'll have probably heard the cow path example where this calf is walking through the woods and over time people follow it and they just keep doing it, and all of a sudden there's a 16-lane highway going in each direction and there's no more woods anymore, and nobody ever asked the question, why does the path or the highway go this way? And it all goes back to that calf that had no sense of what it was doing, right? So then you can look at each step once it's mapped out and go, do I need this? Do I need this operation here? Do I need this delay here? Very good for supply chains. Do I need this inspection here, right? Can I pull that out? Get rid of it. That's going to speed your process up probably, right? And can I replace it, or is there a better way of doing it than the steps we have outlined here? So finding out what reality is first is what process mapping does for you. Mind mapping doesn't really do that. Mind mapping is more, to me, a conceptual, let's think about it, let's figure out what's important to us about it over here. This is not an execution document, whereas a process map is all about tactical execution. That's what we're all about, right? Tactical operations excellence in companies of 12 to 500 people. Nobody else does that, to my knowledge. So that's where you go with a process map. So I hope this was clear. I'm totally happy to respond to questions, comments below, drop them down, and maybe I'll shoot another video digging into another angle, because again, I don't know everything and I have the curse of knowledge here, right? I know what this thing is. I've known about it for over 20 years. So to me, it's just like, duh. But other people, and there are a million areas in business and life where I'm the other guy, right? Who's like, I don't know. Whereas you've seen it for 20 years, right? So let me know if there's anything confusing or you want something clarified down in the comments below, and I will get back to you. Thanks for watching.